Ethan Cole hunched his shoulders against the crisp autumn wind, raindrops trailing down the sleeves of his weathered jacket, intentionally chosen to help him blend in. In front of him, the sign for Bean and Brews 17 flickered in a pale neon blue, casting a dim glow through the gray drizzle. That light used to symbolize his dream, a dream he had grown into a national empire with 64 stores across the country. But this morning, Ethan wasn't here as the founder behind it all. He was just another face in the crowd, a nameless customer seeking warmth and a cup of coffee and shelter from the chill that crept into his bones. He took a deep breath and pulled his collar tighter, as if trying to smother the billionaire in him. "Just one more time," he whispered to himself, slipping into the character of an ordinary man before pushing open the familiar door. The bell chimed, the very sound he'd personally chosen 5 years ago when opening his first location. Back then, he made every decision: paint color, seating layout. Now he couldn't even remember the last time he'd actually stood inside one of his cafes. The smell of coffee greeted him, but he froze. Something was off. The aroma lacked depth, the balance that defined the signature blend he had spent months sourcing and securing exclusive rights for. A sinking feeling crept in. Maybe they'd been mixing in cheaper beans, or maybe the grinder was set wrong. Either way, it pointed to something he'd once sworn would never happen: carelessness. Ethan silently joined the line of 6 people ahead of him. In the past, a crowd like this would have made him proud, a sign of success. But now, it only stirred unease. The foot traffic looked promising, yet the financial reports told a different story. Revenue was slipping. Online reviews were turning sour. More and more people wrote the same thing: "It's not like it used to be." Those words cut deep. Every review felt like a slash to his pride. The pride of a man who had poured sweat and soul into building a brand that was deeply personal. His financial advisor had suggested selling the location, calling it a mid-tier asset in decline. But Ethan wasn't the kind of man who gave up. His success came from rolling up his sleeves and fixing things, from the ground up. As the line inched forward, Ethan took in the scene. The girl at the register, Melissa, according to her crooked name tag, looked exhausted. Her eyes were sunken, her movements sluggish, as if wading through molasses. Her uniform was wrinkled, her demeanor lifeless. Ethan could feel it. The store hadn't just lost its flavor, it had lost its soul. "Next," Melissa called, her voice devoid of energy. Ethan stepped forward with a soft, easygoing smile. "Good morning. Can I get a medium house blend, room for cream?" he asked, casual and forgettable. She nodded without looking up. $4.75. Ethan flinched internally. She didn't mention the loyalty program, didn't suggest a pastry, didn't offer the daily special. All were standard practices, ones he had personally written into the employee handbook. As he handed her a $5 bill, his eyes flicked to the pastry case, half empty, with a few items looking stiff and dry, and it wasn't even midday yet. The case should have been fully stocked. Pastries were a vital upsell. "Thanks," he said, quietly dropping the change into the tip jar. "Busy morning?" Melissa shrugged. "Same as always." She handed him a receipt and immediately turned to the next customer, as if he didn't matter. That answer hit Ethan like a slap. Same as always, but this shouldn't be the norm. Not coldness, not lifelessness, not a place that once felt like home, now feeling this hollow. Ethan moved to the pickup counter, glancing down at the floor where he noticed it hadn't been properly swept. Coffee grounds, crumbs, and dried drink stains had collected along the baseboards. He frowned. A cafe could survive a lot of things, but indifference to detail wasn't one of them. Details were always the first sign of surrender. In the corner sat a plant, one of Bean and Brew's trademark symbols of urban greenery, carefully selected by Ethan himself. Now, it drooped like a forgotten child. Wilted leaves, soft stems, a clear sign no one had cared for it in a while. "Major house for, a young man's voice called from behind the counter. He looked down at the cup, brows neat and well-groomed. "Did we get a name?" "Ethan," he replied. The barista jotted it down with practiced efficiency. "Be right up." He flashed a friendly smile, in stark contrast to Melissa's drained energy. His name tag read Liam, and everything about him was sharp. Crisp uniform, precise movements. Too precise. There was something rehearsed about him, like a man performing for someone unseen. "You new here?" Ethan asked, keeping it casual. Liam looked up with a wider smile. 3 months now. You a regular?" "I don't think I've seen you before." "Used to come more often," Ethan replied. "We'll hope we see more of you. Bean and Brew's got the best beans in town, if you ask me." Ethan nodded, his eyes trailing down to Liam's hands. Smooth, too smooth. No cracks, no dryness, not the hands of someone constantly handling hot liquids and harsh cleaning products. "Mind if I sit for a bit? Just need to catch up on emails." "Stay as long as you like," Liam replied, already turning back to the espresso machine. But as Ethan walked away, he could feel the weight of Liam's eyes tracking him. Then, another subtle tap to the smartwatch. Ethan chose a table in the corner, a vantage point where he could observe both the counter and the door. He opened his phone, pretending to scroll while keeping watch on the team. Melissa moved like a ghost behind the counter. Jasmine, the third employee, kept sneaking glances at her phone beneath the register. But it was Liam who held Ethan's attention. The young barista was too focused. His eyes moved constantly, tracking customers, tables, timing. Every few minutes he scribbled something down on a slip of paper by the register. He wasn't serving coffee, he was watching. As the morning rush thinned, Ethan observed Liam walk over to a table in the corner, a woman in her 30s typing on her laptop. Liam offered her a free refill, charming her so effortlessly that she closed her laptop to chat. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but he saw the rhythm. Liam asked, she answered, smiling, opening up like she wasn't even in public. A few minutes later, Liam returned to the register and made another note. A chill crawled down Ethan's spine. The pieces were forming. Not yet a full picture, but enough to send a signal. Something wasn't right in this cafe. He needed to find out what before it was too late. Ethan lifted the cup to his lips and winced. The coffee was bitter, over-extracted, the flavor scorched, not brewed. It was a betrayal in a paper cup. The standard he once lived and bled for had been lost, and this wasn't just a mistake. It was the beginning of a warning. He almost stood up to ask for a fresh cup, but a subtle movement at the counter caught his eye. Liam was whispering something to Jasmine, the young employee who had seemed distracted all morning. After a few discreet nods, Jasmine quietly shifted the pastry display case, a motion that would seem meaningless to an average customer. But to Ethan, who had laid every tile in this store himself, it was unusual. That case had been fixed in place since day one, strategically positioned for lighting, visibility, and the customer's path of movement. Unease started to bloom in Ethan's chest. To maintain a natural appearance, he opened his laptop and pretended to work, while keeping a close eye on the cafe's every subtle detail. Liam moved through the space with increasing ease, not just like an employee, but like someone who owned the room. He brewed drinks and chatted with customers, but what stood out was his routine. After each interaction, he would glance at his smartwatch and jot something down. Ethan felt his pulse begin to slow, not from fear, but from the realization that he might be wading into deeper waters than he'd ever expected. "Need a refill?" Liam's voice came from just over his shoulder, making Ethan jump slightly. No footsteps, no warning, just suddenly there, holding a steaming pot of coffee. I'm good, thanks, Ethan replied, forcing a calm tone.
It's on the house.
Liam smiled and began pouring anyway. You look like you're working hard. He appreciated, Ethan said, studying Liam's face closely. Up close, the barista's gaze was something more than friendly. It was analytical, like he was reading Ethan's expressions frame by frame. Kind of a slow day today, Ethan ventured. It's never really slow, Liam replied, his voice light as air, just different rhythms at different times. Morning rush, midday lull, afternoon bump. It's like the breathing pattern of a living organism. He glanced at Ethan's laptop screen, which displayed a random spreadsheet Ethan had pulled up for cover. Data analysis or something like that? Something like that, Ethan replied with a half smile. Numbers tell stories, if you know how to listen. Liam nodded, eyes glinting. I get that. Everything's a pattern, even people. Watch long enough and you'll see them repeat themselves. That seemingly harmless statement sent a chill down Ethan's spine. It didn't sound like a casual observation, more like a warning, or a veiled interrogation. He forced a chuckle. Some people just really like coffee. Sure, Liam replied easily, but everyone's got habits. Take you, for instance. Corner table, back to the wall, full view of the room. Not someone who likes surprises. I'm guessing security background or just a people watcher. Either way, you've been observing everyone for the last hour. Ethan felt his chest tighten, every nerve ending in his body lit up like an alarm system, but he held his composure, responding with the most casual tone he could manage. Just a habit, occupational hazard, understandable, Liam said, flashing that flawless smile again. Enjoy the coffee. Let me know if you need anything. He walked away, pausing only to adjust a slightly misaligned chair along the way. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to quell the unease spreading through his chest. This wasn't a coffee shop anymore. It was starting to feel like a stage, with someone watching from behind the curtain. He stared at his screen, pretending to type, but his eyes remained locked on Liam, who had returned to the counter and was once again jotting notes after checking his watch. For the first time, Ethan wasn't sure he was the one doing the observing. The sensation of being watched grew stronger, and his secret visit might have just put him within reach of something far more dangerous than he'd anticipated. This time, he didn't miss it. Liam's glance flicked upward toward the digital wall clock above the entrance. It was a standard fixture in every Bean and Brew location, designed only to display time and cycle through occasional promotions. But something was wrong. From Ethan's angle, he could clearly see a tiny red light blinking in the center. Not part of the original design. Not something you'd notice unless you knew exactly what to look for. His entire body stiffened. A cold shiver ran down his spine. That wasn't just a clock. And Liam was definitely not just a barista. The cozy cafe had suddenly become a trap. Every instinct screamed, "Get out." Now, Ethan began packing up his laptop, trying to move naturally while his mind raced. Whatever was happening in this store went far beyond dipping profits or sloppy service. Someone was watching, systematically, deliberately. As he stood up, Liam looked up from behind the counter and raised a hand in farewell. "Peeping out already? Hope to see you again soon, Ethan." The way he said his name, the slight emphasis, sent a jolt through Ethan. Did Liam already know who he was? Ethan forced a polite smile, nodded, and walked toward the door with measured steps. Inside, his heart was pounding like a war drum. The rain outside didn't cool him down. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he rarely used himself. "Rosa, it's me. I need to see you immediately. Bring your best gear." He glanced back at the cafe. That red blinking light still flashed from the center of the wall clock, quiet, subtle, and menacing. "We've got a situation." Ethan stood beneath the awning of a bookstore 2 doors down from Bean and Brew 17, his eyes locked on the cafe's entrance. The half-filled coffee cup he'd abandoned now sat in a nearby trash can, forgotten, like a conversation that had been cut short. His fingers tapped rapidly against his thigh, a familiar habit when tension built up inside him. The morning's events replayed in his mind like a slow-motion film. That blinking red dot, no way it was a power indicator. Ethan remembered every specification he had approved personally. Bean and brew clocks weren't supposed to do anything but tell time and cycle promotional content. So what the hell was that? Ethan had worked closely with his tech development team during the chain's digital transformation. He knew exactly what a hidden camera looked like, especially one with a micro-infrared LED built for covert surveillance. And now, one was embedded right in his store, in a space meant to embody trust and transparency. His phone buzzed. The short message, just like her. Corner of 5th, black SUV. Ethan raised his collar against the rain and moved briskly toward the location. The rainfall grew heavier, like a fitting backdrop to the storm building inside him. A black SUV sat idling at the corner. The window rolled down to reveal the stern face of Rosa Diaz, the one person Ethan trusted without question. She had started as a barista at his first store, but her military background and razor-sharp instincts had quickly made her the obvious choice to lead security as the company expanded. If anyone could understand what this was, it was Rosa. "You calling me means it's serious," she said as he climbed into the passenger seat. "This time, it's not like anything we've dealt with before." She handed him a tablet. "Tell me everything." Ethan began listing every detail, from the staff's unusual demeanor and Liam's exaggerated behavior to the strange red light in the clock. Rosa's expression gradually darkened, her eyes shifting from skeptical to serious. "Unauthorized surveillance inside one of our own stores?" she muttered. "Show me the layout." The SUV felt more like an interrogation room as Ethan pulled up the floor plan of Branch 17 and turned the tablet toward her. The screen's soft glow lit up their faces, one tense, one calculating. In that moment, they both understood. The investigation had officially begun. Rosa studied the layout and accompanying photos intently, her brow furrowing deeper with every second. "That clock is positioned perfectly to capture the entire customer line and the register," she said, her voice low and measured, ideal for recording every transaction and interaction. "Exactly," Ethan nodded, "but I think it goes beyond that." Liam kept checking his watch after every customer interaction, and the pastry case was repositioned. Rosa pressed her lips together, nodding slowly. "This is a textbook multi-angle surveillance setup. It's professional. We need to go back in." "Too risky," Ethan countered immediately. "If Liam's involved, he probably already recognized me." "Not with my face," Rosa said, opening the glove compartment and pulling out a small black case. "I'll go in as a health inspector. This credential gives me full access to inspect every inch of the cafe." 40 minutes later, Rosa returned to the SUV, her expression cold as steel. She didn't need to say anything. Ethan could tell it was bad. She handed him a small evidence bag. 4 devices total, she reported evenly. One inside the clock, facing the line. Another disguised in the sugar jar. One in the air vent above the main seating area. And the last... She looked up, eyes sharp as blades, and pointed at a tiny black disc inside the bag, embedded in the lampshade above the corner table, the table you were sitting at. Ethan felt a hollow drop in his stomach. "So they knew I was coming." "Not necessarily," Rosa shook her head. "That spot has the best vantage point in the room. Anyone looking to observe the staff would naturally choose it. But," she paused, "these aren't amateur devices. They're military-adjacent tech. Whoever set this up has serious resources." "Corporate espionage? A competitor?" Ethan asked, trying to stay calm. "Possibly," Rosa replied, scrolling through close-up shots of the devices. But this level of infiltration points to something much bigger. These aren't just recording locally. They're transmitting data in real time. Ethan clenched his fists. In my own damn store. He slammed his hand on the dashboard. There's more, Rosa said, flipping to the next image. Liam, mid-shift, serving a customer. His smartwatch was clearly visible. That's not a regular watch. It's a control hub. He's monitoring the feed and probably tagging key moments for later analysis. Ethan stared at the screen, fury and betrayal swirling inside him. A part of him, the part that still believed in the community he'd built around Bean and Brew, was shattering. Did you pull the devices? No, Rosa said flatly. If we remove them now, they'll know we're onto them. We need time to learn who they are and what they're after. Ethan nodded, his jaw like iron. And start with Liam. Run a full background check. I want to know who he really works for. Already on it, Rosa said, starting the engine. What about you? Ethan glanced back at the cafe, once the symbol of his dream, now a violated space. He murmured like a vow. I'm going to find out who turned my coffee shop into a surveillance hub. And I'm going to make them regret it. At the penthouse office of Bean and Brew headquarters, a place that used to give Ethan a sense of triumph, the atmosphere now resembled a war room. The floor-to-ceiling glass walls no longer reflected his success, but framed the battlefield ahead, a fight to protect his reputation and his customers' trust. Tonight, this stays completely off the grid, Ethan said, eyes fixed on Rosa as she installed a specialized monitoring device on the conference table. No board, no execs, no HR. Smart move, Rosa nodded, fingers tapping rapidly on the keyboard. If we've got a leak inside, we can't let them know we're onto them. 3 hours had passed since they discovered the surveillance devices at Branch 17. In that time, Rosa had built a secure temporary operations center and begun analyzing the intercepted data stream. These devices aren't simple, she said, turning her laptop screen toward Ethan. They're using encrypted protocols, bouncing through multiple servers before hitting the endpoint, nearly impossible to trace, unless we know who we're dealing with, Ethan finished, his voice low and eyes glowing with a slow-burning fire. Something had been stolen, not data, but trust. And Ethan Cole, the man who built an empire from a single espresso machine, wasn't going to stop until he reclaimed it. Can you trace it? He asked urgently. Already working on it, Rosa replied, spinning the screen toward him. A map appeared. A tangled web of data pathways crisscrossing continents, 7 relay nodes in total, ending in a single blinking red point. That's our destination, Rosa said, pointing. An IP address registered to a company called Meridian Consulting. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Sounds like a shell corp. Exactly, Rosa confirmed, switching to another screen. The business registration popped up, bare bones. No employees, no office, just a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands. Ethan leaned back, seething. A ghost company. But even ghosts can leave footprints. Rosa smirked slightly. They made one mistake, their encryption signature. I've seen it before. It belongs to proprietary tech developed by New Real Labs. Ethan snapped upright. New Real? The AI company? That's them, Rosa confirmed, pulling up their homepage. Sleek, minimal, filled with futuristic slogans and promises of limitless consumer experiences. They've been expanding aggressively into retail. Their CEO, Victor Shao, is all about revolutionizing customer service using predictive algorithms and automated response systems. Suddenly, something clicked in Ethan's mind. The puzzle pieces fit. Liam's words echoed, watching for behavior patterns. They're harvesting behavioral data, Rosa said, confirming his thoughts. Customer flow, order habits, staff efficiency, everything that keeps a coffee shop running. But why my shop? Ethan paced, clenching his fists. We're successful, but we're not the biggest. Rosa opened another file, A financial report. New Real has been quietly acquiring small food service chains for the past 18 months. They buy low, gut the staff, and replace them with their AI systems. Her voice dropped. They call it optimizing the human experience, but really they're eliminating the human part altogether. They're waiting for us to fail, Ethan muttered, documenting every weak spot, waiting for the perfect time to strike. Rosa nodded, and Branch 17 is the first to show decline, the perfect testing ground. Ethan clenched his fists. Anything on Liam? Rosa shifted the display, one HR profile alongside a very different professional dossier. Liam Walker, 29 years old. On paper, he's a barista who transferred from Seattle 3 months ago. But once I dug into internal databases, I found he's been under contract with New Real for 4 years. Corporate spy, Ethan said, voice flat. With advanced training, Rosa added. He holds a degree in behavioral psychology and spent 3 years working at a consumer analytics firm. Ethan slammed his hand on the table, face flushed with anger. He's not just documenting our downfall, he might be accelerating it. It's worse than that, Rosa said quietly, her tone sharp. The volume of data being transmitted suggests this isn't just routine analytics. They're building a complete operational model of Bean and Brew. Everything from our supply chain and customer profiles to employee workflows and even your management style. Ethan froze. They're copying my entire model while exploiting every weakness. Exactly, Rosa confirmed. Once they have enough data, they'll go to your board with evidence of operational failure and present a comprehensive solution. A hostile takeover, disguised as a corporate rescue. A chill crawled down Ethan's spine. From a single espresso machine in his garage, he had built an empire, and now someone else was dissecting it piece by piece, like prey under a microscope. How many other branches might be compromised? Rosa pulled up a national map of all Bean and Brew locations. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I cross-referenced the last 6 months of new hires with stores showing unusual performance metrics. She looked up. Ethan, you're not going to like this. 3 other branches lit up with warning signs identical to those at Branch 17. Ethan stared at the map, his mind caught in a spiral of strategy and silent dread. We need to verify each location, but we can't let New Real catch on. I have a trusted team, Rosa assured him. They'll sweep every location discreetly, no footprints left behind. And Liam? Ethan asked. Keep him in place, Rosa said instantly. For now, don't make a move. If we act too soon, New Real will know we're onto them. Ethan's phone buzzed, a calendar notification. He'd nearly forgotten, a scheduled quarterly performance review at Branch 17. I'm due there tomorrow, he said, showing Rosa the screen. Routine inspection, and Liam's on shift. Rosa's eyes narrowed like blades. That's not a coincidence. They're monitoring your calendar through the company's internal systems. Ethan's jaw tensed. Then maybe it's time Liam finds out exactly who he served coffee to yesterday. His voice dropped to a low growl, filled with resolve. They think they're tracking a target, but the target is watching them now. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Bean and Brew Branch 17, casting long streaks of light across the polished tile floor. Ethan adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke suit, a deliberate contrast to yesterday's casual disguise. This time, he wanted to be seen. No more hiding. This was the opening move of his counterstrike. Rosa stood beside him, tablet in hand, internal security credentials clearly displayed on her chest. Remember, she whispered, we're just a routine inspection team. Don't show all your cards. Ethan nodded. He pushed open the door with the quiet confidence of a man who had personally laid every tile beneath his feet. The familiar chime rang out, but to Ethan, it wasn't just a welcome, it was a declaration of war. Behind the counter, Melissa looked up, her eyes widened, not in recognition of a regular customer, but in realization. Standing in front of her was Ethan Cole, founder, billionaire, and the face of the bean and brew empire. She straightened up immediately, voice faltering slightly. "We're cold, we weren't expecting you until 10. I like to arrive early," Ethan replied evenly. "Gives me a better look at how the shop runs under natural conditions." He scanned the cafe. The morning rush was in full swing. Customers lined up, the espresso machine whirring, baristas calling out orders. A normal morning on the surface. But now every detail weighed differently. "Is your branch manager available?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I'll get her right away." Melissa hurried to the back office. Just then, Ethan caught sight of Liam at the espresso machine. The young barista was focused on a complex order, movements efficient and fluid, completely unaware that yesterday's anonymous customer was now watching him from the other side of the game. Moments later, Sandra Chin emerged from the back with a practiced smile, though her eyes betrayed tension. "Mr. Cold, what an honor. We weren't expecting you so early." "I'm aware," Ethan said, shaking her hand firmly. "This is Rosa Diaz, head of corporate security. We're here to conduct a comprehensive review today." Sandra's smile wavered. "Security? Is something wrong?" "Just part of our new protocols," Rosa interjected smoothly. "Mr. Cole is implementing upgraded security standards across all locations." Ethan glanced again toward the counter. Liam had just finished preparing the order and turned to deliver it, and at that precise moment their eyes met. In that split second no words were exchanged. But Ethan saw it, the flicker of recognition, the split second of shock, followed by a flash of panic, all expertly masked by the calm, professional expression Liam had clearly trained to maintain. "Sandra, I'd like to use your office to review some footage," Ethan said, eyes never leaving Liam. "Ms. Diaz will walk the floor." "Of course, sir, right this way," Sandra replied, leading him toward the office. As Ethan passed by Liam, he noticed the young man's hand frozen mid-motor, coffee cup suspended in air, his fingers stiff, body locked in hesitation. "Good morning, Liam," Ethan said casually, like an old friend. "Hope the coffee's as good as yesterday's." Liam paled, but instinct kicked in. "Yes, sir. House blend. Room for cream." Ethan gave a thin smile. Impeccable memory, a useful skill. In the back office, Ethan dismissed Sandra with instructions to assist Rosa. Alone now, he sat before the store's surveillance monitors. He pulled out his phone and typed a short message. "In position, begin sweep." Within minutes, Rosa began moving naturally through the cafe. Her tablet, disguised as a standard inspection tool, quietly scanned for electronic signals. Her path was deliberate, passing each of the identified surveillance points. On the monitor, Ethan watched as Liam's behavior changed. His gaze followed Rosa's movements, flickering toward the hidden device locations. When Rosa paused beneath the digital wall clock and subtly adjusted her glasses, triggering a signal jammer, Liam instinctively reached for his watch. Ethan's phone buzzed. Rosa's message. "All devices neutralized. Bringing him in." He watched as Rosa approached the counter, flashed her credentials, and requested Liam join her for a routine security questionnaire. Liam had no choice. The office door opened. Rosa let him in. Whatever confidence Liam had left was gone. In its place, a tightly coiled tension barely held together. "Please sit," Ethan said, his tone calm but firm. Rosa closed the door and folded her arms, taking position beside it like a silent sentry. "Mr. Cole," Liam started, trying to compose himself. "I didn't realize that was you yesterday. I hope your experience—" "Spare me the act," Ethan cut in, turning the monitor toward him. Footage played on screen. Unmistakable. Liam adjusting one of the hidden cameras at the sugar station after hours, long after the store had closed. New Real Labs has a pretty sophisticated surveillance setup, Ethan continued, his eyes locked on Liam's reaction. Liam's face didn't move, pale, blank, the kind of stillness only training could instill. I don't know what you're talking about, Liam replied. 4 cameras, Ethan said, unfazed by the denial, each placed in a strategic location. Real-time data streamed through 7 international relays, ending at New Real's analysis center. He leaned in slightly, his voice lowering. Impressive operational security. Military grade, I'm told. A twitch flickered at Liam's jawline. He was starting to crack. I want to speak to my manager, Liam said stiffly. You mean your manager at Bean and Brew? Rosa chimed in, her voice calm but razor sharp. Or your handler at New Real? She slid her tablet onto the table. The screen displayed Liam Walker's real file, not that of an ordinary barista, but of a seasoned field operative, specializing in corporate infiltration and behavioral data collection. We know who you are, Mr. Walker, Rosa said, her tone like steel. Liam's eyes flicked between them, calculating, weighing outcomes and exits, but this was no longer his stage. Finally, his shoulders dropped, barely, but enough for Rosa to notice. A silent concession. My employment status is complicated, Liam admitted carefully. Corporate espionage usually is, Ethan replied coldly. How many other Bean and Brew locations have you compromised? Liam didn't answer. We already know about 3 others, Rosa added. Our tech teams are dismantling the surveillance devices as we speak. This time, the shock in Liam's eyes was genuine. That's impossible. There's no way you could have uncovered them that quickly. You underestimated how well I know my own company, Ethan said, voice hard as granite. Every fixture, every design choice. New Real was arrogant to think I wouldn't notice changes in stores I built with my own hands. Liam's expression shifted. Recalibration, recognition. He was reevaluating his opponent. New Real identified Bean and Brew as a potential acquisition target 6 months ago, he finally admitted. I was assigned to collect operational data to support the evaluation process. You mean spying, Ethan corrected, unflinching. Market research, Liam countered smoothly. My job was to document inefficiencies and customer experience gaps, areas New Real could improve. To build a report suggesting my company is failing, Ethan said, voice steady but heavy, so they could swoop in like saviors, offer a low-ball buyout and turn my cafés into glorified vending machines. The small office fell into a tense silence. Liam's professional mask finally cracked, revealing the cold calculation behind his eyes. New Real calls it inevitable progress, he said quietly. Cafés like yours run on razor-thin margins. One bad quarter and shareholders panic. New Real offers a solution. Optimized systems that remove human error. You mean firing baristas and replacing them with machines? Ethan shot back, voice rising. Liam shrugged. Some customer-facing roles would remain. The rest become unemployment statistics. Ethan stood, casting a long shadow across the desk, a shadow that fell squarely over Liam like the weight of his fury. How many locations are on New Real's acquisition list? A flicker of hesitation crossed Liam's face. We have 2 options, Rosa said, stepping forward, her tone terrifyingly calm. You cooperate, or we send every piece of surveillance evidence to the feds. Corporate espionage doesn't come with a slap on the wrist. Liam considered, visibly, then nodded. 12 coffee chains across the country, 58 locations total. He looked Ethan square in the eye. Bean and Brew's just one of them. Ethan's jaw clenched. And your role? Embedded data collection, Liam replied without pause. I log customer flow, staff efficiency, management gaps. My smartwatch flags timestamps for deeper analysis. Examples? Rosa pressed. Long wait times, customer complaints, staff disputes, anything that reflects operational weakness. And then you and your people build a complete failure profile for each store, Ethan said, his voice like a hammer. So you can approach business owners at their lowest point, offer them what looks like salvation but is really exploitation. Liam didn't deny it. Most owners are actually relieved to be bought out of a dying business. Ethan stormed around the table, each step deliberate, fury barely restrained. And my branch managers, were they involved? No, Liam said quickly. They are unaware. New Real works entirely beneath the radar. Rosa tapped something on her tablet. He's telling the truth. The data shows the managers are being monitored too, assessed for replacement potential. Ethan felt a brief flicker of relief. His inner circle hadn't betrayed him, but the emotion quickly gave way to fresh rage at the audacity of a corporation willing to destroy everything for the sake of optimization. Who do you report to? Ethan demanded, voice like flint. Liam hesitated, but Rosa's sharp gaze pushed him forward. Alexis Mercer, he said, VP of Acquisitions. She oversees all regional operations. And when's your next check-in? Ethan asked, already mapping out his next move. I send encrypted daily reports, Liam explained, but the official meeting, the quarterly review, is scheduled for tomorrow night, with all field operatives. Ethan gave a small, deliberate nod. A glint flashed in his eyes, cold, sharp, and focused. If that was the meeting, then the final battle was about to begin. A plan began to form in Ethan's mind, clear, precise, and surgical. He glanced at Rosa. She returned a barely perceptible nod, already reading his intent. Where? Ethan asked. The Meridian Hotel, private conference room, Liam replied. Ethan smirked, the kind of cold smile that held no warmth. Cancel it. Tell Ms. Mercer you've arranged a more ideal venue, right here at Bean & Brew's headquarters. Liam hesitated. She'll never agree to that. She will, Ethan said, because you'll tell her you've identified a perfect acquisition opportunity, that the branch manager is willing to negotiate, behind the founder's back. His eyes gleamed with a cold fury, sharp and tightly controlled. Tell her you uncovered signs of systemic failure the manager can't fix alone. Liam wavered, his gaze shifting from uncertainty to understanding. You're setting a trap. I prefer to call it a business meeting, Ethan replied smoothly. And trust me, it's one she won't dare to miss. Still visibly conflicted, Liam glanced down, but Rosa slid a file across the table before he could answer. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of a verdict. Option 1, face federal charges for illegal surveillance. Option 2, cooperate, and we might discuss immunity. Liam stared at the folder, then at his smartwatch, his link to New Real. After a long pause, he looked up and spoke in a low, resigned tone. What exactly do you want me to tell her? 30 minutes later, Liam returned to his station behind the counter. Outwardly, he maintained composure, but his pale face betrayed the internal collapse underway. Rosa took a post near the entrance, tablet in hand, posing as someone reviewing security protocol, while in reality, she tracked Liam's every move. Ethan stepped outside and made a call. Carla, it's me. I need an emergency meeting with our legal team. Through the window, he watched Liam go through the motions behind the espresso bar. No longer just a barista, but a spy whose cover had just been blown. Also contact PR. We may need them on standby. The next morning, Ethan stood inside the conference room of Bean & Brew's headquarters, giving the setup one final scan. Legal documents were arranged neatly across the polished table. A hidden recording system was active. 2 business journalists waited in an adjoining room, observing everything through a one-way glass panel. "Ms. Mercer has arrived," Ethan's assistant said through the intercom. She brought 2 associates. "Perfect," Ethan said softly. "Send them up." Rosa stood in the corner, her hands clasped calmly in front of her, eyes razor-sharp. "Are you sure this is the way to go?" she asked quietly. "We could still take this to the authorities." "New Reel has too many resources," Ethan replied, eyes fixed on the elevator doors. "They'll bury us in litigation for years. This way, we get results. Now." The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. Alexis Mercer stepped into the room, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a flawless tailored suit without a single wrinkle. 2 sharply dressed men followed her, their expressions cold and unreadable. And at the rear, visibly diminished, walked Liam, stripped of the confidence he wore days earlier. "Miss Mercer," Ethan greeted her, offering a handshake wrapped in formality and veiled hostility. "Welcome to Bean and Brew. I believe you were expecting to meet with a branch manager to discuss a potential acquisition?" A flicker of surprise crossed Alexa's eyes. She recovered quickly, her corporate training taking over, but Ethan had already seen it. That split-second crack was all he needed. "Mr. Cole, what a surprise," she said, shaking his hand with just enough pressure to show she was still pretending to be in control. Her eyes darted to Liam, who stared at the floor, avoiding contact. "I like surprises," Ethan said pleasantly, like a breeze before a storm. He gestured to the table. "Please, have a seat. We have much to discuss. New Reel's interest in my company, for starters." He sat down, his smile wide but cold. "And the illegal surveillance campaign your firm has been running through my cafés." For a split second, Alexis's poise cracked. Her eyes betrayed a flicker of panic. But the mask came back on. She smoothed her jacket, sat gracefully, and signaled for her colleagues to follow suit. "Mr. Cole, I'm not sure what Liam has told you, but I assure you, there's been a misunderstanding." Her voice was calm, her cadence measured, as if rehearsed. New Rail partners with businesses to improve operational efficiency. Any research conducted is strictly standard market analysis. Ethan remained standing, deliberately keeping the height advantage, a silent assertion of dominance. "Is that what you call installing hidden cameras to record my customers without consent?" His voice was low, steady, and lethal. And one of Alexis's associates, the thinner man with wire-framed glasses, shifted uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should consult legal before continuing this discussion." "A great idea," Ethan replied, smiling. He pressed a button on the conference phone. "Rosa, bring in our guests." The side door opened. 3 people entered, a stern-faced woman in a sharp navy suit, and 2 journalists, with press badges around their necks. Alexis's eyes widened, only for a heartbeat, but Ethan caught it. "Allow me to introduce Patricia Wells, head of legal at Bean and Brew," Ethan said smoothly. "And these are representatives from Business Journal and Consumer Watch." He turned to the journalists with a cutting smile. "Thank you for making it on such short notice. I appreciate your interest in today's announcement." "What announcement?" Alexis asked sharply, voice suddenly tighter. Ethan slid a folder across the table. "Or official press release detailing New Reel's coordinated corporate espionage campaign targeting independent food and beverage businesses across the country." He met her gaze, the warmth long gone from his expression. "Unless, of course, you'd prefer to negotiate an alternative." The 3 New Reel executives exchanged glances. No words were spoken, but the message was clear: cooperate or face public exposure. "This could be damaging for both parties," Alexis said carefully. "Surely, we can reach a more discreet resolution?" I thought you might say that, Ethan replied. He nodded to Patricia. She opened a folder and placed a thick legal document in front of each New Reel representative. A binding agreement, she said firmly. New Reel will cease all surveillance activity targeting food service businesses. You will destroy all collected data from Bean and Brew locations, and you will provide a full list of other businesses subjected to similar tactics. The man with glasses flipped quickly through the pages, his face paling. These terms are extremely severe. They won't be nearly as painful as federal charges for privacy violations and corporate espionage, Rosa said from across the room. Her voice was calm, but each word struck like a blade. We've compiled enough evidence to prove violations of at least 17 state and federal statutes. And that's not all, Ethan added. New Reel will also be making a significant financial contribution to a new industry development fund dedicated to supporting small coffee businesses affected by predatory acquisitions. He read the figure aloud. Alexis recoiled as if slapped. That's outrageous. That's the price of keeping your company's name off the front pages tomorrow, Ethan replied, his tone even but words sharp as needles. I imagine your shareholders would prefer this expense over a complete market backlash. Alexis turned sharply, eyes narrowing on Liam, who stood awkwardly by the door. You violated company protocol. Made the right call, Ethan said firmly, and speaking of choices. He pointed toward the documents laid out on the table. You have approximately 30 seconds to make yours before I instruct these journalists to run the full story. The air in the conference room grew thick with tension. The three New Reel representatives whispered among themselves, anxiety written across their faces. Finally, Alexis Mercer sat up straighter, her eyes steely, and reached for a pen. New Reel will agree to the terms, she said tightly, each word deliberate, on the condition that everything remains confidential, as long as you uphold your end. Ethan nodded. One by one, the executives signed. He collected the documents and personally escorted the journalists out, thanking them for their time and promising a different kind of announcement soon. When he returned, Alexis was already on her feet, her posture composed, the mask of professionalism firmly back in place. I underestimated you, Mr. Cole, she admitted, the bitterness in her voice barely concealed. A common mistake, Ethan replied. One that could have been avoided if you had come to me directly rather than planting spies in my stores. Business evolution isn't personal, she said coldly. It's inevitable. So is adaptation, Ethan countered. But it doesn't have to come at the cost of people's livelihoods. He walked to the door and opened it. Rosa will escort you out and coordinate the data transfer. I suggest New Reel look into more ethical business strategies moving forward. After everyone left, only Liam remained, still standing quietly near the door, eyes downcast. What happens to me now? He asked softly. Ethan studied him for a long moment. His gaze wasn't angry, it was calculating, as if weighing a lesson. You're terminated from Bean and Brew. That's obvious, he said, and I included a non-retire clause in our agreement with New Reel. He paused, his voice lower now. Beyond that, your future is your responsibility. Liam nodded slowly, accepting the outcome. For what it's worth, your cafés were different, he said. There's something in them our algorithms couldn't quite capture. That's because coffee isn't just a transaction, Ethan replied quietly. It's about community. That's something New Reel will never understand. 3 months later, Ethan sat in his usual corner of Bean and Brew Location 17, watching the morning rush unfold smoothly under the leadership of the new manager, hand-picked by Rosa to replace Sandra, who had since been promoted to regional operations. The cafe looked completely different now. Warm lighting bathed the space. The furniture had been rearranged to encourage conversation. A community board showcased artwork and events from local artists, Behind the counter, baristas engaged genuinely with customers. There were no hidden cameras, no silent surveillance. Location 17's revenue had increased by 32% since the overhaul. Clear proof of Ethan's original theory. Authenticity can't be automated. His phone buzzed. A message from Rosie. Security sweep complete. All locations are clean, no unauthorized devices. Ethan smiled, setting down his coffee, perfectly brewed this time, rich and complex, just as he had originally envisioned it. He looked up at the wall where the camera-seeped clock once hung. It had been replaced by a handcrafted wooden timepiece made by a local artisan. No technology, just craftsmanship. A young barista approached. "Mr. Cole, can I get you anything else?" Ethan looked at him, sincere smile, bright eyes, and shook his head. "No, thank you, Aiden. Everything is perfect." His eyes swept across the cafe, his cafe, a dream that had once been violated, now reborn and stronger than ever. Everything was back where it belonged.